This video is going to show you a solo Master Nightfall getting platinum rank for the Scarlet Keep. This is going to be the last week of Master Nightfalls, and next reset will be Grandmaster Nightfalls. We're getting them next week. Yes, they've updated the tooltip. For whatever reason, it gave an incorrect date when you looked at Grandmasters, but it now states the correct date, which is next week, I believe. So there isn't much point on doing Master Nightfalls, but Scarlet keeps up, and it is a favourite of mine overall. So I figured I would do a run of this Nightfall whilst you wait for GMs, and just show you something a little bit different. This week now, the weekly Nightfall modifier, which is exclusive to Master Nightfalls and below, is a modifier called Togetherness. You'll see on the left hand side it says Drifting Apart. For some of you, you might even not know what this modifier is if you're new to the game, because you may have only just really played either Hero Nightfalls or GMs, because that's sort of the way most playtime is for players. They're either playing the low difficulty Nightfalls to farm it out for catalysts and stuff, or quick loot, or they're doing GMs to Guild the Conqueror. They're not doing Legend Nightfalls and Master Nightfalls, because there isn't really much point on doing them anyways. Right, you're always just waiting for GMs, and if there's no GMs up, you'll do the Hero Nightfalls, and I do as well, because you might be doing bounties, stuff like that. So yes, we have the modifier called Togetherness, which Togetherness means that you do not get health regen if you are solo, but it doesn't say that. It just says while standing near your fire team members, you gain health regen. This is impossible when you're solo. It's a very poorly designed modifier. Thing is though, we have so much stuff in the game now over the last 1 to 2 years where we have a lot more health regen stuff to use to counter this modifier. I'm using the Stag, the exotic helmet, the Stag for Arc Warlock, and Suros Regime. That's what gave me the idea, is because Togetherness is up this week. I was like, well, what damage does Suros Regime do in PvE now? And it procs health regen on some kills. So, and it's a barrier aura rifle. Now I could have used Crimson. Crimson might have been a slightly better option. I could have done that. Crimson with it would be a barrier bow, right? That's the only trouble with that, is I'm not able to use Eremite, this solar fusion rifle that I'm using. So I wanted that in the loadout, and I wanted a good barrier weapon. I didn't want to use Quicksilver Storm, because I get fed up with using that weapon, if I'm being completely honest, and it is super strong. And I didn't want to use a Strand build. If I used a Strand build, maybe I would have put on the old Quicksilver Storm, but I didn't want to do that. So I was like, alright, what other exotic autos have we got? And the whole health regen with Suros, it clicked. I was like, alright, I'll try it out. With focused fire. It's not called focused fire now, it used to be, I think. There's 2 perks on the gun, you can switch in and out. You can have rapid fire, or you can have slow fire. I done the rapid fire test, and it wasn't very good. I could barely kill 2 acolytes in one magazine. With the slower rate of fire auto for Suros, the perk, I was able to be far more consistent at range. I don't know if the damn perk adds range, because it doesn't say it does. But I'm telling you, it's far better in PvE, endgame PvE, to use the slower rate of fire option. This isn't PvP, this isn't time to kill, this isn't, well, you run the other perk, it's faster time to kill. We're not playing PvP, we're playing PvE. We need a weapon consistent enough at range. And Scarlet Keep is a long range Nightfall. So Suros actually passed the test in usability, which shocked me. I actually think it was like a good 7 out of 10 exotic in this. Now, obviously, the go-to option will be Wishender, but I've heard of so many people that they're sick of seeing exotic bow gameplay, because all us solo players are basically just copying each other's gameplay. Well, we're not copying each other's gameplay. It's just that there's only so many playstyles you can do with a damn bow, right? There's only so many playstyles, so everybody's playstyle is going to be very similar. If I just look at someone else's run on YouTube, copy their loadout exactly, I'm telling you, my playstyle will be just about the same as theirs. The run difference time between the solos will vary between 2 to 3 minutes, that's it. So if you've watched one solo run of this Nightfall this week, and I copy someone else's build, then you've already seen that run. But you haven't seen this run on screen. I guarantee you definitely have not seen the run on screen, which is why I'm trying to, like I say, post and open people's minds a little bit. But it's difficult doing so, isn't it? But we try nonetheless. So with the 2 tower section, try to prioritize using a super for the wizards. It doesn't matter really what class you're on. Obviously I'm on Chaos Reach because Arc is just generally nice to use in Scarlet Keep. It's not Arc Surge, by the way, it's Strand Surge and something else, Void Surge I think, which those 2 elements I've never found to be as nice in this. Strand will be, but I'm not in the mood to use Strand. If I'm not in the mood to use a class, I won't. But I was in the mood, to, as I said, to use an Arc class. It was going to be Arc Titan or Arc Warlock. That's the ideas I was playing with. Because of Togetherness, Warlock wins because Stag's too good. I could have used the Vesper of Radius exotic chestplate, which would have worked well at the final boss fight, but it would not have worked well getting to the boss fight. The reason being is because Vesper of Radius power is based on how close you are to enemies. The whole Nightfall up until the boss is long range. Vesper of Radius gives me no power gain until the final boss. The problem is with that is that the final boss is so easy that it can be done in less than 10 minutes solo anyways. So you can see my decision making is that Stag is the better choice because I'm standing behind cover. I'm a 50-meter range away from the enemies. Stag's gonna be better. I get critically wounded behind cover, I pop my Rift. If I get critically wounded with Vesper Radius and I'm 50 meters away from the enemies, that ain't giving me no power gains, so I would have to play more aggressive. But the whole Nightfall, as I said, is a long range Nightfall. So don't get me wrong, it would work at the capture plates section, Vesper Radius, really well, and it would work exceptionally well at the boss fight, but it doesn't really matter. You need to build craft into what the issues will be with your run, not the easy parts. The easy part is the boss. I actually don't remember it being this easy. Bear in mind, like I say, Master Nightfalls are no joke, they're minus 20 delta. You've got silly mods on like Attrition and Togetherness and Famine. All these hard, difficult mods that are not in GMs. Master Nightfalls are no joke, right, compared to GM difficulty. If I'm being completely honest, the GM version of this would be actually easier than this Master Nightfall right now because I can get my damn health back. Whereas with this Nightfall, I can't. I've got to start to build out a sort of health regen build to sort of get the best of both worlds. Whereas if I'm in a GM, I will put on Geomag stabilizers. I have no need for Stag. I have zero need for Stag in the GM because I will get my health regen and I'll be able to put out more damage with Curse Reach. Geomag stabilizers because it had a buff. You get more supers now with it and it is noticeable. So that would be the better choice. But on Master Nightfall minus 20 delta attrition, it isn't the better play. The better play is the Stag or some sort of health regen exotic for your class. With champs, I always try to debuff them. See, we've got the Rapid Fire Ranger, which is Sunder and Glare mod. You must be using that. It is literally the best mod this season to use. That and Semi-Auto Striker. But that's, I believe it only works with bows and stuff. I don't think it works with auto rifles, where you get charged with, you get armor charges when you get some precision hits and stuff. I haven't got that accessible, I don't think, because as I say, I'm using a auto rifle. But the Rapid Fire Ranger is exceptional, and it's gonna work. That's what's actually making Suros a little bit more consistent than what it usually would be in PvE, because I have access to that debuff. On top of that, exotic primaries do increase damage to enemies anyways, so it's gonna be actually doing half decent-ish damage. It's gonna, if you honestly, like, I'm not joking around, but if you use Suros regime, right, envisage it, think of it like as a Quicksilver Storm but without the Grain Launcher perk. It's gonna feel very similar to that, but without the additional nano traces and stuff. In my opinion, it needs a huge buff. Right, we need to stop looking at weapons as, well, this weapon's only PvP, this weapon's only PvE. Suros should have some sort of viability, especially with the whole 10-year anniversary coming and they're bringing back Red Death. Like Suros Regime was like the King Auto rifle in D1, especially with the focus fire. It was literally like a fully automatic scout rifle in D1. It was literally like, as I say, a fantastic weapon. In D2, not a fantastic weapon, by no means. But the game's come on a long time since then. I'm just saying they should definitely buff it. I haven't got a catalyst, but I can't honestly be bothered to farm 300 PvP kills or whatever. Because I literally don't play PvP, I can't stick it. So you're not going to find me doing that until they provide some sort of option PvE to get the catalyst. Then I'll go ahead and do them. All the catalyst does is it just makes it that you get more health. You're more likely to get health on a kill. How much more likely that is, I don't know. But is it worth my time and suffering to go into PvP to farm that right now? No, it isn't. I'll just leave it and play with the gun as it is right now. This section can be quite difficult, especially if you haven't got a bow on, because the difficulty of this section is the acolytes and their nades, the shrieker at the back of the map, and a champion on the stairs. The champion on the stairs is going to be a constant threat to you, but so will the acolytes. So you disengage from the combat, you get naded. You engage with the combat, you are then confronted with the barrier that can, as I say, once he gets 2 direct hits on you, you could be critically wounded. If an acolyte nades you whilst that's going on, that could be a quick death that happened to you and you weren't paying attention. So this bit is a little bit difficult, but at least you're seeing how this section should actually play out, rather than me just using Wish Ender and abusing that weapon to the fullest to easily do this section. See, what you need to understand with combat in D2, they've kind of ruined it, the whole system of it top to bottom, when they buffed exotic primaries. When they done this, don't get me wrong, they made a lot of viable options for GMs, solo GMs, fire team runs, all that stuff. But they indirectly destroyed every other single weapon archetype in the game. Right? They've recently just buffed hand cannons. Right, that's great. Hand cannons are usable. Why just hand cannons though? Pulse rifles are not usable. Scout rifles are barely usable compared to an exotic primary. Why use a sidearm? SMGs, they are consistent, but literally any other gun isn't. It's like legendary wise, the game, like I say, the exotic primary choice that they made was great, but they were slow to buff other legendary primaries. They've let it go on too long, which means that Wishender, Lum Monarch, Quicksilver Storm, Osteostrigger, these weapons are dominating too much and the game is in an unhealthy state. We need to be able to use exotic heavies and exotic special weapons in PvE again. It has to happen, because as I said, we can't continue on with this Wishender gameplay. It is literally gonna make people fed up of watching stuff on Twitch or YouTube, and I don't want that to happen for PvE, because as I said, it's gonna make it stale. For, you know, I'm on about hard endgame Grandmaster Nightfalls. I'm not on about raids, I'm not on about dungeons. Those are different types of content, but ultimately your hardest type of content in the game is Grandmaster Nightfalls, or Day 1 raids of course as well, but that's only twice a year. So the other weeks and days of the year is you've got your Grandmaster Nightfalls. So they need to get it right. We need to be able to use legendary autos, legendary pulse rifles and all that sort of stuff to make sure that we can then use an exotic heavy. We might want to use Thunderlord. I'm not saying that you can't not use Thunderlord in GMs, you can, but the play loop is a little bit, you're nerfed. If you don't use an exotic primary, you are definitely hindering yourself. You will definitely not get as good of a clear as someone who did use an exotic primary. It's just literally how it goes. You also won't learn nothing, especially if you've just started to play. I know a lot of you have only really just started to play in the last 1 to 2 years, but there's still a lot of you that are good players out there, even though you've only had 2 years, whereas I've played since D1. The problem is you don't learn nothing if you just put on the best stuff, because you don't really understand how the combat works. Do the champs de-aggro when there's a certain percentage of enemies that are killed, and how to control this? Like for example right now here, I'm fighting this barrier. if I kill more than 50% of the acolytes that are surrounded by him, he will back up to the plate section, making it more difficult to get a barrier. So what we then can do is reposition ourselves in such a way that the acolytes don't hit us, and we kill the barrier before he de-aggroes. Like, look, he's trying to de-aggro right now. He's trying to run away because he's below half HP. Right, now with Wishender, how that would have played out is I would have killed him before he jumped across there. So then you wouldn't have learned nothing. You wouldn't have learned that he de-aggroes after certain triggers are met. You don't learn nothing if you use the best stuff 24/7. And like I say, I'm just trying to, as I say, open people's minds a little bit. The game's been out for an age, but still a lot of you still lack the understanding of the game. And that's not your fault. It's just literally how it is. But as I say, I've studied the game long enough to know all the trials and tribulations of it. Like if you do something like a GM, a solo GM with white gear or blue gear, you can bet that you literally know everything. Like if you can do that, then you can literally do anything in the game probably. Anything in the game. The only thing that you need is time. That is it. And not everyone's got that. So with the plate section, you get extra snipers if you do left or right plate first, I believe. So you're better off capping the first plate. Get the first plate out the way. It also will spawn in the Thrall, because the Thrall are spawned or tied to the middle plate, you capturing the middle plate. There's also these initial acolytes that are already here. Before you even cap a plate, they're here. And the solo wizard. You get 3 solo wizards total. So what you want to do, I think the best way would be to cap plate 1 first. Right, the middle plate, sorry. Get a pulse nade in mid, because there's 2 snipers spawn. Your goal is not to kill the champ. Your goal is to get these snipers down. Get a rift down as well. Try and get amplified. Because when you pop a healing rift, right, you'll then have that to help you take out all these Thrall. You're going to head glitch at stairs, so the snipers and the barrier can't hit you. All the Thrall are going to come into you, and you're going to be patient and just take out all the Thrall. This is the GM strat, by the way. The entire video is the GM strat that you would do, apart from maybe you wouldn't use Suros regime. But I've proved that you could definitely actually use Suros regime. I wouldn't need to do that because there's no health mod hindrance there, right? But you would then clear out all the enemies, and then you've isolated. The key word is isolated. You've isolated you and the champ. Right? It's just you and the champ on the battlefield. All the Thrall are taken out, all the snipers. There's no chance of death as long as the barrier doesn't hit you enough. The solar fusion as well. Use that when you can, because it absolutely melts. You need to make sure it's controlled burst though. I wouldn't recommend you use this fusion without that. You must have it on. It is a high impact frame, which there's something weird going on in the game right now with high impact frames. Honestly, I was really oblivious to it until people started saying and doing DPS tests on this particular fusion, and I was so shocked because Cartesian coordinate, iterative loop, rapid fire frame fusions are literally just been the best for so long that isn't quite the case anymore, but it's situational as well. But I haven't used Eremite this week in Scarlet Keep. I can honestly tell you this is going to be a weapon you want to use in GMs as well. Not only DPS, raid checks, but also in endgame content because of how much damage it puts out. I haven't even crafted the damn gun, right? And the damage it puts out, especially if you get it to proc control burst, plus with unstoppable fusion, this will stun lock enemies. And what's the hardest thing about Scarlet Keep? I can tell you something, it's not the champions, it's the solar wizards. The ultra solar wizards have always been the most challenging aspect to Scarlet Keep. So if you can stun lock a solar wizard with a solar fusion like that and put out the huge damage that it does, I can almost tell you that this will definitely be the meta loadout for Scarlet Keep GM. It will be Wishender, Eremite with a machine gun. Probably an arc machine gun, although you could get away with using a void. But I would say probably arc because there's a lot of Arc Knights. That's just what I would do. I'm not saying I would use 7 Seraph Saw. I maybe would, because I really actually like the feel of the weapon. So I would maybe use 7 Seraph Saw or the new Arc LMG that's a 900 RPM from this season, because it comes with target lock, but I haven't got that crafted yet because it's red borders, obviously. But if I don't have access to that, then I'll maybe just use 7th Seraph Saw. It doesn't create the Warmind cells like it used to, but that's not really why we will be using it anyways. We will be using it for its ammo, its slow firing, hard hitting. It's just overall a fantastic machine gun, and generally high impact LMGs aren't that good, but for some reason this one has always been something. It's just always been something appealing about this machine gun. And there's like I say, you need to cover arc shields. I know match game isn't on, but you should still be really matching shields, because that elemental explosion that you do to targets gives you that extra damage. You also can overload, because we've got overload machine gun. This means that you can prevent Boomer Knights from putting their shield up, and I'll talk about that when I get to the boss, because that's where it's going to be really relevant. So you get a barrier per plate, right? That should be obvious by now. But the barriers on left and right plate are very easy to take down because you've got the head glitch. So make sure you head glitch at the stairs like so, and like I say, you can be melting these champs. If you've got a pulse nade as well and you jolt them, then they're going to go down really quick. So we're 22 minutes in. We're probably 3-4 minutes behind what a meta run would look like. So even though I'm handicapped by using a weapon that's suboptimal, I'm sort of keeping up with the time of what a regular run would look like. So that speaks volumes. That means, as I say, that it's like a tug of war match. It's like, well, if you use a suboptimal loadout, your knowledge has to take over and basically carry the run. So, you know, what do you do when you haven't got that infinite ranged primary? How can you sort of manipulate the enemies so that in your favor? So you need to know how every combat scenario would work out depending on what your loadout would be, which there are probably, how many possibilities would there be? Well, it's not an infinite amount, but there'll be enough enemy RNG and variations to the combat depending on what you're using. But I'm just saying I would know every one doing this particular Nightfall. Well, I know that for every single Nightfall, apart from some of the battleground Nightfalls, as I haven't played them enough. But I'm just saying that I would know every combination of how to play with every single weapon archetype that we have in the game, and that knowledge it will go a long way, because when you're getting these seasonal mods of we've only got barrier auto this season, we've only got barrier sidearm or whatever, it won't matter to you that is the case, because you'll have mastered every weapon archetype in the game, in endgame content, so that you can, as I say, nothing should be that much of a problem to you. Hopefully, at least, anyways. Make sure that you take out the sniper up above whilst you're dealing with the barrier. Actually, you should be taking that sniper out first, because he can snipe you whilst you're trying to take down the barrier shield and stuff. Now you've got a bunch of Thrall. We're going to kite or bait all these Thrall here, because there's 2 Acolyte snipers in front of us, which they can double snipe you. So we're going to, as I say, bait all the Thrall to me. Now you need to understand this next section. The barrier champion that spawns next to that red pillar will retreat or de-aggro if you kill all the acolytes surrounding the champion. This isn't too much of a thing, but it's a little bit of an optimized thing that you can do. Use your cover and ignore the acolytes for the most part. If you do that, you can actually kill the barrier here rather than having to kill him later on. Because when you kill him later on, you're confronting with snipers. He will literally back up. You'll have played this and you'll have seen where the barrier backs up. He backs up because you've killed all the acolytes. The acolyte is less confident to deal with you. But if all the acolytes are alive, the champion is cocky, so he wants to deal with you. which means it gives you that momentary time to debuff him and kill him there and then. So it's something that you've dealt with. There's an ad behind us. We have a radar on. You may as well use it. This is not going to be a loyalty that you get on GMs, bear in mind, with the radar thing. So you do need to keep check on ads and how many you've killed, and you should really know all that stuff. But sometimes, from time to time, even the best of players can miss one ad or two. So just be careful that you don't get flanked, because he was a sniper there. So I need, you know, but when radar is available in in-game content, use it. But I really honestly don't like the idea of not having radar, because having radar is part of Destiny. It's part of teaching you how to play the game. Alright? Just like it is in PvP. Right? What do PvP players say? Right? Your gameplay is in the background. Your entire focus is that radar in PvP. Well, funnily enough, when I learned PvP in D1, because I used to be an avid PvP player in D1, that's sort of what I still kind of do. The gameplay in the background is just background noise. It's just background stuff. I'm actually, if there's a radar up, I continually look at that radar. Depending on what Nightfall I'm playing, especially Glassware, right? If you have access to it. In GM you don't, but for the most part. But like I say, I really don't like the fact that there is no radar in GMs. That's not added challenge. That's just a hindrance to players that have played the game for a long time. Give them a radar, because new players need to learn how to use the damn thing, right? And be keeping an eye on it. That's part of the combat experience. So that's another mod. They need to throw it out. All this stuff, there's a lot of stuff that they need to throw away and start again with Nightfalls. I don't want to see in Final Shape that we're still in the same situation with mods and stuff. They need to really throw out a lot of stuff. Rotating surges, if they're going to have surges rotating like they are, have more surges, right? So if you have 5 subclasses, I don't know, have 3 surges one week, 2 surges the next week. And have it so that for every 2 weeks, your surge, your class will come up every 2 weeks at the very least. We can't go on for seasons just having like access to 2 surges or whatever the rotation is. That's just not good enough, because there is certain people that main Solar Titan, some people that main Stasis. When we get a Stasis surge? Oh, probably next season, right? That's ages away. I'm playing the game right now. I want it now. I don't want it then. So they need to, as I say, after Final Shape, they need to be looking at these mods. It must be looked at. It must be looked at. Someone needs to get a post up on Reddit. Tell people. They need to look at it. Nightfalls are not good. Just because people play them doesn't mean that they are in a good spot. It just means that people want to gild their Conqueror because they want to show it off to other people. That is the only reason. It's not because Nightfalls are particularly fun. If you can get that barrier there, the same thing with this barrier. Remember this rule of, like I say, if you clear out all the acolytes, this barrier will actually go up this bridge and back all the way up here. We, as I say, had an opportunity to kill him before that happens, and then we can clean up the 2 other acolytes. They weren't snipers, I believe, so I was safe enough to do that. You don't have to literally, as I say, play everything to the T. You know, you can push when you need to push. I believe that you should push. You should be always sitting back in PvE and stuff. You should push when you can. But like I say, only when you know that that opportunity's come up. But you need to recognise when an opportunity comes up with a champ before it really does, or it's starting to look into your favour. That's a trait that you'll gain after hundreds of hours. Well, it won't take you hundreds of hours, but after so many hours of playing with champs and stuff, you'll begin to learn that. But you won't learn these skills. These skills will never be learnt if you LFG your Nightfalls. I'm saying that you probably should LFG Nightfalls, but I'm just saying you don't have access to this extra knowledge that I'm telling you. And you definitely will not learn it. If I had LFG'd since my Destiny career started or whatever, and I never went the solo route, and I chose to do a different style of content, my knowledge might have been different, and I might have picked up other things that other players have, but I would have definitely lost out on all this other knowledge that I'm telling you right now. I would definitely never have learnt it. I'm not a mind reader, no one is. But if you don't do something enough, you would never know about it. It's obvious, it stands to reason. So I'm just saying that, like, as I say, if you really want to learn all this extra stuff, then you've got to be committed to do it, whether the game's in a bad state or not. In actual fact, it's not in a bad state. This season's really good. Well, it is in a bad state and it isn't. The season's good, but we'll see how it plays out. We are just waiting for final shape. Really, that's all we're really doing. I will say the season's not very rewarding though. I will say that, like, red border weapons, there's issues with that. Like, why can't I get red border weapons weekly? What's all that about? You know, I unlocked some card where I could unlock 2 red borders, and then now it's not on a weekly lockout. I don't know if there's something to be unlocked later down the line. I don't know, but I'm not too hot on that. I've done a lot of altars of summoning, and I wasn't getting any reds, barely. So I haven't found it to be really rewarding. It's got to be. They've got to get these red borders in line. Either that or sell deep sight harmonizers. Deep sight harmonizers need to be sold for in-game currency, and I'm not talking about silver. Well, you could have it as an option for silver, but it also needs to be an option for bright dust, or maybe not bright dust, maybe legendary shards. Right? I'm not saying that would open a can of worms if they started to sell those for silver, so maybe not, but I know that's probably what they want to do in the end game. But 6 deep sight harmonizers per season isn't enough. They've unlocked it. They've done a good little thing with the deep sight harmonizers. That solves the red border problem, because there's so many craftable weapons in the game now that if you skip a couple of seasons and don't get the red borders, when you come back to the game, there's literally 50, 60, 70 red borders that you need to farm. And you're telling me you only get 6 deep harmonizers per season on the season pass? That's not good enough. They need to have Xur sell it or something, have it linked to some quests, be fair with it. They need to be fair, like I say, and allow this material to be purchasable in some fashion. I'm not asking for them to drop like legendary shards and we have an infinite number of them, because that would just make the game silly. But there needs to be a middle ground with it, so that we can get plenty of red borders, so that we're not playing the entire season just looking at red borders, because that's only one aspect of the game. That shouldn't be your entire pursuit, but it kind of is, isn't it? Because you need to be crafting weapons, because some of these enhanced traits do increase the power of the gun quite a lot. Some of them can make quite a bit of a difference. Some of them don't even work, some of these enhanced traits. Some of them only give you a little bit of a benefit, but ultimately, if you're a PvE player, you want the best shiny stuff. It's as simple as that. If you didn't, well, then what would be the point in playing the game? You know? So, like I said, the deep sight harmonizers, they've created a problem to the solution, but they've also just sort of give you 6 a season, and it's not enough. Fair enough, it should be 6 on the season pass, and then, as I say, a way to purchase it from some vendor. Make it a weekend thing. Have it with the exotic cipher quest. Link it into that. So if you do your exotic cipher quest, you get 5 deep sight harmonizers with that. And that would make people, as I say, go to Xur even more. You would get your exotic cipher to then re-roll an exotic armor piece of your choice, because you can pick that now via the Cryptarch. It would make complete sense, and it would help people make progress, and they'll be motivated to play. Because when people look at their with their red borders, they look at it and it's like, well, I can't be bothered farming this, but I do want to craft the gun. So I'm gonna have to, as I say, go through all this busy work just to get some damn borders. I don't want to play 50 altars of summoning or salvage or the seasonal activity. I don't want to be overkill from it. All right, I want to play it when I want to play it, but I don't have to play it over and over to get reds and like roll that dice to that extent. It's too much. It just ends up causing burnout. Even if the activity is good, doesn't mean that we should be playing it constantly. All right. This little section makes sure that you can kind of get ambushed, which means you can get attacked from front and back. Make sure you take out some initial adds from both sides, which is important. And then once there's, like, on the other side, whatever side you're not fighting against, the acolytes will de-aggro from you a little bit. meaning that you can go to one side and take out the Solar Wizard. Be careful with these Solar Wizards. As I said, they are the most difficult aspect to this run. I think it is arc threat, so the enemies are buffed by arc damage, but we are not. So bear in mind, I've used Chaos Reach here, and I haven't even got a Surge on. I haven't even got a Surge on, so that just goes to show how good arc is in this. Don't be overconfident as well. Try to get a stun lock on the Solar Wizard. The thing with these wizards as well, well, any shielded enemy in the game, is that once the shield is taken down, they want to go behind cover. Unless they are overloaded. I've just overloaded that wizard. Alright, people will be like, how the hell have you overloaded a wizard? There isn't overload wizards. Well, no, because overload works on every single enemy type in the game. I'm disrupting them, which causes them to be a little bit more idle. You try shooting a boss with a monarch or a champ, and you will see they will start to do things that they generally wouldn't do. And they will start to do less dodges, they'll start to stand around a little bit more, or the attacks are less frequent. So anytime you have access to Overload, whether it be Overload SMG, Overload LMG, then that's going to be one of your go-to weapons for the season. When I face the Arc Boomerites, you're going to see it, because what do Arc Boomerites want to do, right? They want to put up their darkness wall and regen their HP. That's what they want to do. But if you overload them, they won't do it. And you'll see it coming up, as I say, when I get to the boss fight. I'm using the exploit for the tower, which does work. It's not really an exploit, it's just a join allies thing. It just means we don't have to deal with the elevator section, which is nice, especially because Togetherness is on as an active modifier, of course. So we're now at the final boss. There's 2 Solar Wizards to deal with. I recommend trying putting in as much damage in as you can whilst your rift is up. Right, so I'm going to use a bit of Eremite. I'm going to kind of spam it, but not too much, and try and get at least 1 Solar Wizard down and the second wizard half HP before my rift expires, at least. I actually decided to melt with the LMG because once your rift goes down, these wizards tend to hide and then they'll be annoying. Now I'm going to debuff boss with the rapid fire ranger first, with a machine gun or a rifle, it didn't really matter, then use super. The goal right now, because I'm going to, as I say, give you this commentary goal by goal, the goal was to get the boss to close to a third, not to a third. Why? Because the odds are tied to the boss's HP. If we get him to a third HP, you are going to have Arcanites, you're going to have a Solar Wizard, 2 Solar Wizards, you're going to have a ton of enemies. The thing is, there is a ton of enemies right now, but there's no Solar Wizards. The Solar Wizards are not procced until a third HP. Which means you're making your life a little bit easier if you just leave the boss alive to a third HP. The boss isn't much of a threat to you here. This little zone that I'm using where the skull pile is, right? This is not an exploit, it's just a form of cover. That's how I've classed it. And it's really good. It's a good base of operations to fight from. It means that you can literally do this with any loadout, but you want to try and use an efficient loadout when you're behind cover. So Void Walker would be good. Any arc grenade build. The last time Scarlet Keep was up, I remember using Storm Grenades, Arc Titan, the nerfed version, and it worked out really well because I'm behind cover, throw a Storm Grenade, it tracked the ads somewhat and killed them, and I made a little build out of it. That build would also still work, although Pulse Grenade is the better choice, but you know, that's also a good option on GM difficulty. Not so much this, because when you're a Titan you're gonna not have access to much health regen behind sitting that pile of behind that cover, so that would be no good. On phase 1, once all the enemies are taken out, you can then fight the boss and pick up ammo. This is your chance to get ammo because you're going to be using a lot of it, and you don't want to spam too much special ammo. Your special weapon ammo really is for assistant damage and champions and the solar wizards, but obviously I've just took those out anyways. The boss's mechanic, he will do a green shield round you and boop you off map, or can do. That's not as bad now, you don't get booped to high hells like we used to, but try to stay out of that because you can hit a wall and take damage and stuff. It won't kill you, but she could clean you up with a couple of arc blasts. The boss is immune now, so you need to immediately go back to your safe zone. Oh, sorry, the solar wizards are out now. My bad. So this is where the solar wizards are. We'll take the shield arm off one, because one wizard will push, one will not. That's just how it works. You need to be aware that you can be pushed off the map by these thrall or melee based knights. Not the boomer knights, but melee based knights. There's 2 acolyte snipers that spawn on this phase as well, so just be aware of that. Always pay attention to your HP bar. You know, I said before, always look at your radar. Well, right now, actually, always be looking at your HP. Any little damage that you take, you then think ahead of yourself, right? So I'm a 3rd HP now. Togetherness is on. Can I push right now? The answer is yes, because the snipers were taken out. I have gotten hit a little bit, but I know that I'm going to use a rift anyways coming up. I just need to get aggro on the solar wizard, and the best way of doing that is actually pushing up, because what you need to understand is the boss is shielded, but the boss is just a ragdoll. The boss doesn't stomp right now. The boss doesn't do any damage to you, which means on this phase it's actually just you and a wizard, right? The boss will only attack you once the shield is taken off. This is done to give the player a chance. Alright, especially on GM difficulty. It's done so that you can at least deal with the wizards. But the problem with the wizards is that they hide behind the boss. As I said, that's why I push up with a heal and rift and take down the wizard. We're half to a super. We're going to use a bit of LMG ammo. Get the rapid fire ranger procced on the boss. We get booped there, which we were a bit lazy with our movement, but that's okay. I'm looking at my special ammo on the floor, seeing how much I've got, because I am preparing myself coming up for a couple of champions, which I reckon I'm going to need at least 5 shots per champ, minimum, and I've got 12 shots. What ammo I've got on the floor? So I'm now looking at my ammo options. I'm max heavy though, which is really good, actually quite lucky. We have a pseudo phase before the actual champs come out, which is good. That means that we can deal with all these ads before champ phase starts. I recommend that you do this in increments. You literally do. This is how all GM bosses should be done for you now. You shouldn't be attempting to do maximum damage possible only on GMs like Warden and Nothing, where you have a chance to solo 1 phase. This is literally one of the only bosses that you have chance to solo 1 phase. That one and Fallen Saber, which isn't a 1 phase, but you can melt the boss each phase, and it's safe to do so. But for the most part, most bosses, you don't want to be melting bosses, because it generally isn't good, because that means you're dealing with 3 or 4 waves of enemies rather than just 1 at a time. That's how they want you to play the game. They want you to feel that combat experience of going through each phase, doing a little bit of damage. I know it's not fun to people and they don't like these damage gates, but that's how it is. It's not like the old days like we would have, where we could have an opportunity to use heavyweight on our Nightfall cards and melt the boss's solo 1 phase. It was a funner time, but that's just not how they want us to play. They've dictated to you how they want you to play. It's their game. Don't forget it. Don't make no mistake. It's their game. It's not yours. Even though we think it's our game as a community, it's not. Most decisions they make, right? Some of it's based off the community, but a lot of it is as well based on their own pride and how they want the game to be. Alright, they know certain things are too powerful, but they let it ride. It's the philosophy since Luke Smith. They want each exotic to have its time in the sun. The problem that I have with that is that some exotics are burnt because of this, and some exotics are in the shadows far too long. like far too long. And that's the issue that I have, is that it's not timed in such in a timely manner where, alright, this exotic's been too powerful for far too long, what are you going to do about it? Well, we're just going to let it ride. Alright, but you're favourable to this exotic but not to this exotic. It makes no sense anymore, but that's just how it is. They're focusing on other games. They can't micromanage this game and another game, which for those people wanting to buy Marathon, I would give it a second thought. Do you really think they can manage D2 and Marathon side by side effectively? Do you really think they can do it? You're gonna hope that they can, right? But can they? If both games go down server side, which game do you think they're going to get up first? I ask you the question. I know the answer, but what do you think? I don't think it'll be D2. I think it'll be Marathon. That'll be up first, and then they'll focus D2 afterwards. These curves for all are dangerous. Just make sure that they don't come too close. You need to strafe right in the corner of this cover if there's some issues, as I say, with them, as I say, coming too close to you and stuff, because that will actually make them de-aggro a little bit. We're on the final phase. On the final phase, there's no enemies that spawn immediately. I think the enemies spawn at about 25% HP. I don't need to know the exact number because it doesn't matter, but we're going to just actually kill him right here, right now. Which, the way of safely doing this, because I haven't got geomag stabilizers on. If I had geomag stabilizers on, it would be a little bit easier. But this is how I would recommend you do it. Debuff him first with your LMG. Go behind cover. Right, get him down to, as I say, a half. 20% left. As soon as you hear that roar, the audio cue of enemies coming out, get a pulse nade down and case reach. He's debuffed, the boss, or she, whatever. And then you get a quick kill at the very end and it's safe. That was a solo on this. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.